Hello, everyone. We're getting ready here to start. And waiting for Lyndal. Connect to Instagram as well. Lyndal, we just need to remember to put our speakers off on the computer so it doesn't echo. I think yours is off. Just checking. But your microphone needs to be open. Yeah. So let me unmute you. Hello, everyone. Thais. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So YouTube is now on. And Instagram is on. I'm just waiting for Lyndal to request to come on to the live transmission. And she should be plugging in a moment.
I already did.
There you go.
I have.
Perfect. Oops, sorry guys. Let's bring the camera back here. Sorry, I know you would love to watch the view, but there you go. Here we are now. Hello, Lyndal. Welcome aboard.
Hi, Cristina. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Let me just adjust this angle. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so just to remind you, we usually have our live events on both Instagram and YouTube. So when I look here, I'm looking to Instagram. When I look here, I'm going to be looking to YouTube. So please forgive me for looking at two different places. And I hope it doesn't get too confusing. So just give it a couple of minutes for everyone to come in. And I am going to start by introducing Lyndal. Most of you know me. I'm Cristina. I'm the founder of Mandarina Consulting and Training. And Lyndal and I met a number of years ago when we worked together for the Four Seasons, right?
Long time ago.
Long time ago. So Lyndal was training manager back then. I was in operations, rooms division. I loved all her training programs. I was a major supporter. And I also, she gave me the opportunity to train a few groups as well as a trainer. So those were some of my very first classroom experiences. So I'm grateful for that, Lyndal. Thank you so much. And I ended up being very passionate about this thing as well. So Lyndal, however, continued her career in human resources. She spent more than 18 years working as a human resources executive in several different industries other than the luxury hospitality. She also did early and mid-stage tech startups and global travel retail. So early this year, she launched her own company called Larkin Leadership. So she's focusing on startup and small businesses for founders and CEOs and their executive teams. She's an executive coach and a leadership consultant for these groups. She also leads mastermind groups for a few new and emerging HR executives. So I know I sent this link to our HR group here in Vancouver. So I hope you're watching this. Lyndal is amazing. Maybe you can connect with her. She lives in Los Angeles, California, so not too far from us here in Vancouver. And she also collaborates with a nonprofit organization called LA's Best. So that's just to say a few things about Lyndal. I'm so happy to have you here and to be able to hold this conversation.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So we were like warming up and deciding what we're going to do. And we decided on this theme beyond collaboration, right, Lyndal? Mm-hmm. As we see that out of adversity comes a lot of opportunity. So many of us feel overwhelmed right now with the situation, with leading ourselves, with leading our own development, with leading our teams and supporting our clients. And it's so much in our plates right now. So yeah, so this is why we decided to do this live transmission. Do you want to add a little bit about what we decided in terms of content, Lyndal?
Absolutely. I think also we are saturated a little bit right now with resources for companies, and where you and I both saw that we are hearing the need from our clients and within our communities is that support for the individual. And I think there's this interesting time right now with a lot of messages around being productive, and then the backlash from that of don't be productive, just survive, just relax. And I think there's an opportunity to be really thoughtful and intentional here in the way that we approach this. And I don't think it's going to be is that support of it being one month, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, as we might have initially thought. But I think it is looking at these milestones and saying, okay, so where do we have an opportunity to be thoughtful and intentional about our own learning and how we are interacting with those around us, so that at these various milestones, we can look back and feel as if we've grown, we've developed, we've had some learning out of this, and doing so in a really thoughtful, productive way.
Yes, very well put. And there will be moments, more productive moments, and other moments of reflection, right? And I mean, this is how it goes. Good moments, bad moments, good days, bad days. We know there's a lot of that. There's moments where we're extremely creative. There are moments where we just need to go for a walk and breathe a little bit. So for us who can actually do that, it's always, a great opportunity. And what you said, which is very important, is how to intentionally, in the moments where you can and where you feel centered, how do you intentionally create development moments for yourself and for your team? So maybe we could start by exploring a little bit of that, Lyndal.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I want to say too is as we approach this, I would really invite the audience to consider the growth mindset. And for those of you that may be familiar with it, there's the growth and the fixed mindset. And so the fixed mindset would suggest that our character, our intelligence, our creativity is static. What we have is what we have, and that is where we will be. The growth mindset is really almost the opposite of that, and the growth mindset thrives on challenges. It sees failure as an opportunity to expand and grow and develop, and it really begins with us. And where we have that opportunity is to think about this as a growth mindset. And I always think of the Wayne Dyer quote, and I'll summarize it a little bit. But in short, an orange, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out of an orange?
Orange juice.
And it's and his quote is a little bit more articulate than that, but in essence saying we are like the orange, right? As humans, when we're put under pressure, right? What's inside is what comes out. And I think we're seeing that more than ever now. And we can talk a little bit more about this as we go through today's conversation around the value of that, of seeing the essence and really being our most authentic selves. But where I think there's that opportunity is to start internally, and in how we're leveraging this time to pause and really thoughtfully develop our leadership skills and consider who and how we want to be during this time, and recognizing the orange. And both you and I have been through, I think we were both working in hotels during September 11th.
Yes.
The economic crisis of 2008, and we've seen it, and that experience for so many leaders. It's very easy to be a really exceptional leader when you have all of the resources.
Absolutely.
And business is booming, and the markets are great, and that's in any industry. And when it's not, is where that pressure, that orange juice comes out. And we spend a lot of time kind of honing the external piece of that. So inside.
Yes, exactly. And what you said is it's key, right? We've been through so many moments. This is one more. We always hope it's the last, but deep inside, we know it's not going to be the last. And when you say intentionally deciding, I don't know what words you use, but intentionally deciding what it is that we want to have within us, so that when pressure squeezes us, that juice tastes sweet, right? We have to recognize that between stimulus and response, there is choice, right? So what we're having out there is a stimulus that we're taking in. We're watching TV, we're going out on the street. Everything can be very scary and etc. Yet how I'm going to react to all this is my choice, right? So I always like to illustrate that, if you allow me, with an example, very simple example of two children with whom I was traveling once. And one was 5 years older than the younger sister. And he was always like picking on her. And she was always crying. And it came to a moment we were in the swimming pool, and it was like, it's driving me nuts, right? So I picked her up in my lap and I held her and I said, what's going on? And she said, well, John, pretend that's his name, is really annoying me. And then I said, no, he is provoking you and you are getting annoyed at him. And she was like, oh, and she was so young, and yet she could see there was like important stuff in there. So she reflected, and I said, when he's provoking you, what is it that he wants from you? He wants for me to be annoyed. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And you're giving it to him again and again. So he's never going to stop, right? So it's a little bit of the same with, so I said, he is provoking you. You have a choice. You can either be annoyed or just whatever, let him be. And she was so wise, and she learned it real quick. Of course, every now and again she would slip, but it's not different from us, right? When we're watching TV, when we're talking to people, when we're going through life, we have all this stimuli. Now, how we're going to respond to this, what we're going to put it within us, it's entirely our choice. Easier said than done. It gets to all of us. But then there's a few things, right, Lyndal, that we study in common and that we really love, that helps us come right back to the center, so that when we're squeezed by that pressure, the juice that comes out is orange, because we chose how to react to that stimuli, to those stimuli. Right?
And that's such a great example. I think Stephen Covey is probably one that has talked the most about the stimulus and response, and that idea of being able to pull it apart, because that's where the power is. It feels powerless if I know that as my little brother pinches me, I'm going to react and say, ouch. And that's a very helpless feeling. I think a lot of people are feeling very powerless and helpless right now. And there is a piece. And sometimes in pulling that stimulus and that response apart, there may or may not be a gigantic action that we can take, or a decision. It may be a mindset of how we choose to respond and react to that moment. But those stimuli will continue to happen. And our choice and our power is that response. And I love your story for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And what could you suggest an exercise, Lyndal, to bring people right back to center when things get a little bit overwhelming and when they would like to just, alter the taste of that internal juice?
I like this, the juice thing.
The orange juice.
Yeah, so one of my favorites, and this is so incredibly simple, it's a breathing exercise. And sometimes we have time to really breathe and to go through a whole exercise. And I'll talk about a little bit longer one. Sometimes it's one breath and that power of the breath. There is research that shows that if our exhale is longer than our inhale, there is a physiological shift in our body and in the way that we process and can relax. And I see you doing it.
Yes.
If we inhale and we exhale longer than we can then inhale, that one breath can be incredibly powerful. And sometimes we're in a little bit of a different setting right now, where it might not be that boardroom in which we don't have the space. Right? On a Zoom call, it may be a little bit easier to step back, to take a breath. There's another exercise where we have the time. I call it 4-7-8. And this is a time tested. This isn't something that I created. I learned this probably 30 years ago from a mentor of mine. And it was breathing in for the count of 4, holding for the count of 7, and exhaling for the count of 8. So again, that same process of exhaling twice as long as what you are inhaling.
That's amazing.
And what that does, doing it once or twice even, and if you can do it 3 or 4 times, fantastic. Doing it once or twice creates a little bit of space,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of space there to say, okay, I have a choice in how I respond. And I oftentimes will use driving. I'm not driving so much right now. So I was surprised the other day, driving down the street, and I had not been driving in over a week, and a car cut very closely in front of me, and I had that little power of choice, right? And my normal reaction would be to honk and have and feel like they did this to me, and it was that exact moment of saying, okay, how do I want to be in this? And it's a challenging situation. It's a really simplistic one, but we all have those triggers. We all have those moments where if we can just take a breath, if we can have something that will shift our mindset a tiny bit to recognize that we have the power of choice in how we respond, then our response is different. And you may recall from some of the training that we talked about together, there's a concept that talks about the communication cycle. And it says that any communication dynamic or two, we're each one half of the circle. So if I shift how I'm reacting to you, how I'm responding to you, where that cycle is broken, and you need to then shift in how you continue to respond to me. And most simply put, it takes two, right?
It takes two.
There's an opportunity there for us to actually influence and shift the behavior.
Exactly.
We can't control it, but we can influence it.
So in NLP, we say we as individuals are a system, and then any two individuals are a whole different system. And then if a third one comes in, it's a different system. And, when we talk about collaboration in times like this, we have to be very aware of those systems. So as we are trying to exercise our power of choice, we also have to be very attentive and very aware as to how what we are sending to others, how is that impacting others? How is our stimulus impacting others? And how is it making them be at ease, right? Or how is it making it more challenging for them to choose to collaborate, to choose to engage, to be centered, to feel comfortable, and to ease the overwhelming feelings and to find more calm so that they can perform, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'd like to talk about 4 key leadership behaviors that I think feed right into this, and especially during this time. And one is creating that sense of community. And we see, and there's lots of webinars and lots of tools, so I won't go too deeply into this, but that sense of how do we create a sense of community with our teams? And this may be within our social networks, it may be within our families, certainly within our peer groups, and maybe the teams that we're interacting with on a regular basis from a professional perspective. And creating that sense of community, that commonality, the common theme of what we're working toward, what we're working on, is a piece of that. The second one is transparency. And I think this really speaks to something you just said around the power that we have to influence and impact others. And that transparency is more powerful and more key than ever right now. I think leaders tend to feel that they need to have all of the answers, that they need to be able to respond with certainty. And when there isn't that certainty, they don't say anything. And I think what we're seeing now repeatedly in a variety of different industries, sizes of businesses, is that the leaders that are engendering loyalty, that are really connecting with their teams, are those that are able to offer that transparency. And that transparency is sometimes saying, I don't know what this looks like. I'm not sure.
Please help me figure this out, right?
Yes, sense of community. How do we design something together?
Nothing builds more community than that. Nothing builds more community than saying, hey, I need to reach out and you guys are going to need to help me figure this out, right?
Absolutely. And some of the best leaders are so beautifully vulnerable.
Yes.
Transparent in that. And we somehow somewhere think that we have to have all the answers, that we have to be the all-knowing, composed individual. And I think what we're seeing right now is pushing us to that transparency in sometimes uncomfortable ways, but it's engendering this loyalty and this connectivity with teams like never before.
And I've been talking to quite a few leaders, as you know, as a coach and sometimes as a mentor. And this is such a great opportunity to be able to learn to exercise that vulnerability if you don't know how to exercise that, and to know that it's not you as a leader who need to save everyone all the time, or who need to have all the answers, or who, on the contrary, because when you recognize that you alone don't have the answers of how this is all going to unfold, how are we going to plan our return, for example, we may not all have all the answers, but if we're able to value the human, component of our teams, and understand that their intelligence, if we put all their minds together, we get so much intelligence out of the group. And if we're able to do this in an organized sort of manner, with being ready to process all the information that comes out and form images that are common to the group and co-create solutions with the group, you're going to have much better solutions than you would just thinking by yourself. You're going to have a stronger team, my ESL, and you're going to have a stronger team working with you, and they will feel more valued. Because when we have all the answers, we're actually taking their opportunity away to think and to reflect and to create their own concepts and ideas, right?
Absolutely. One thing I would also say about the transparency right now is, and I'm going back to the orange analogy, of that shiny orange. We spend so much time sometimes polishing the outside of the orange. And I had one of the senior executives that I'm coaching right now told me a story the other day and said, I'm trying so hard to be polished and presented on the phone and make sure the background doesn't have my children's toys and make sure that there's no noise. And one of her children had a temper tantrum while she was on a call. And she said, by the time I got onto the call, my hair was ruffled and I didn't have jewelry on. I wasn't well put together. I hadn't had time to put lipstick on. And she said the freedom that she felt and that connectivity with her team to say, hey, you know what, I'm having a rough day. I am really struggling right now, and I need 10 minutes to just compose myself, manage what's going on with my family, and let's adjourn this for 10 minutes and come back. And she was telling me the story a day later, and she said, I was horrified at the time, and yet the freedom that came out of that and the connectivity that she felt with her team, for them to then be real and be authentic in this moment and say, hey, I'm kind of struggling too, and I'm not feeling so shiny and put together right now, and that's okay.
And to me, Lyndal, this is one of the most beautiful things I'm seeing arise out of this moment. And I'm even seeing like a couple questions coming in. I just wanted to let everyone know that we will answer these questions, and we will bring that to the conversation a little bit later. But thank you for sending questions, and keep sending them. But one of the most beautiful things is that people are allowing the human being in them to be seen by the human being in their teams. And this is being so powerful as we strip off all those layers that we wear. So there's the company, and then there's the title, and then there's my, the way I dress for that. And there's all like this, behaviors and etc. that we end up like sort of, dressing layer after layer after layer. And sometimes we get lost. Where is the individual within those layers? So we can't get lost. And now people are finding themselves, and they're acting with such naturality. It's just, they're just being who they are. And listen, I'm having a rough day, and that is so refreshing for whomever is on the other side. Because if we just allow people to really be who they are, rest assured, we're going to open the space for everyone to deliver their best contribution, to put their talents available to the group, to put their best available to the group. And there's nothing more powerful when we open that space, that people can so naturally collaborate. And this is what we say, it's beyond collaboration. It's truly valuing the diversity in your team, diversity of, frames of mind, backgrounds, whatever, culture, whatever it is, right? And getting the best out of that, to blend all that orange juice together and make it California's best.
Absolutely. And that leads into the third behavior for me, which is about being humane. And
Mhm.
being humane sounds easier sometimes than it is. What I mean right now by that is that during these times, it is recognizing that everyone is having a very different experience. And what I'm hearing from some clients, and one of my clients put it so perfectly, he said, he's single, he lives alone, and he said, I'm having a really, a challenging time because I miss connecting with humans. But he said, I'm getting caught up on reading, and I cleaned under a bed that I haven't cleaned under in years, and I sorted my closet. And he said, when he initially went into this and would connect with his team for their regular stand-ups or one-on-ones, he said, I was coming at it from this assumption that everyone was having that same experience and that they wanted to maybe stay on and stay connected longer. And then I'm seeing, wow, people are having, they're trying to manage homeschool, and I know many people on this call are likely experiencing and hopefully nodding their heads and recognizing themselves in this, that everyone is having such a very different experience. And humane, I would liken to empathy. It's not, there are dramatic differences, and we cannot assume to know what those are, but being able to simply recognize and allow for a little bit less than perfection. I think there's been
Perfect.
much conversation about getting it done and making it happen. And yep, we're businesses and we're humans that have, to-do lists and things we want to do. But there's a piece there of empathy and saying, how do we bring that humanity to it and connect with our teams in that way. And then the final piece, which really ties into this, is communicative. How can we be as communicative as our teams need? And this same individual client that I was speaking about said that he had sort of this moment of realizing that it would be valuable maybe to check in with his team members at how often they want to connect, right? He was doing every morning and every night, and okay, should we do lunch together? And I just want to make sure I'm communicating. And yes, there's a huge element and huge opportunity to ensure that we're connecting and communicating. And again, there's a lot of materials and resources out there and talk more extensively about this, but I would suggest at least on a daily basis that we are connecting with our team and checking in, going back to that humane and that humanity piece of simply saying, how's it going, Cristina? How are you doing today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. But that communicative piece needs to be customized to the individual and to the team. And what's working, and not making those assumptions. Again, saying, so what works for you? How often do you want to connect? What feels authentic and helpful to you? Not a hindrance, but is going to be meaningful. And I think those four pieces: the creating a sense of community, ensuring transparency, remembering our humanity in this, and our communicative piece are elements that can really support us during this time that I think will continue for at least another couple of weeks in varying degrees. And I think there's elements, as you talked about, the authenticity and really seeing the real piece of that can maybe lead us into the future in a more powerful way.
Yes. And just before we expand on that, going back to what you're saying, first of all, it all ties together. And what a great opportunity this is for us to intentionally develop those four behaviors that you're talking about, right? Building a sense of community when there is no place to have coffee together at work. We're not having lunch together. We're not meeting. We need to intentionally do it. We need to make it a point to schedule moments where we build that community. We need to let go and be transparent and be humane and less than perfect. I think this is just so, it reminds me a little bit of how the millennial generation operates. They're like, oh, please, get out with all that fuss. I just want to see what's inside, let's be fast and let's drop all that, that stuff around it, and let's just get to the point. They're very much like that, right? And connecting, being communicative with your teams. I mean, look at the difference of like bumping into someone in the corridor or the hallways, right? And say, hi, how are you doing? Oh, doing great. How are you? Doing great. It's almost like it's a set plot. Nobody often like stops and says, oh, not doing so good today. It's almost like it's an autopilot, right? But when you call, you do that personalized call to check in with someone in a moment like this where we're distanced. It's more intentional and it's more real, and you will call to really check on them. I wonder how they're doing with all, everything that is happening in their house. All of a sudden, we're able to see what's happening in the person's house. We see the person behind the screen, right? And that's pretty amazing. So thanks for bringing that, Lyndal. Did you want to talk a little bit about the essence now? Where do you want to go?
Yeah, you know what? The one thing I would say, just that as you're talking about millennials, and I think millennials have demanded of our workforce that authenticity.
Yes.
For much longer than the last 3 months or 2 months. I want to say, just millennial or not, right now I'm hearing from some clients that there's this perception that, well, it's people should be grateful to have the job, right? That we're in a very tough employment market, and look at all of the unemployment and all of these different components. And I will say that I actually would suggest it's the opposite of that. This is the time to retain our teams. This is the time to build that connectivity and be able to retain them for the future. And I'm seeing jobs out there. I am seeing companies that are snapping up the talent. This is the time to retain our talent. And what we are doing right now will speak for itself in 6 months, in 9 months, in 12 months. And I think there's a piece there to just acknowledge that.
Absolutely. It's key. There will be a lot of movement in the market. So also, if you weren't 100% happy in your work, perhaps this is a great time for you to reflect, to really think about what it is that you would like to do, to really think about what it is that you would like to bring into your life, because there will be a lot of movement in the market. And there will be opportunities for people to reinvent themselves. And to be frank, I think at the end of it all, the right people will be on the right places, because those who are really happy in a company and the company is really happy with them, if the company is smart enough, you should be holding on to those talents, right? Take really good care of them. Maybe this is the time for those who are unhappy to, look for something else, and they will be happy elsewhere and they will be held there. So lots of opportunities there going that way. But yeah, make sure you take care of your top talents. This is not a time.
This is the time to build commitment to really engender loyalty that will take us much further. We will come out of this, and there will be huge opportunities for talent, and fantastic for the talent out there to say, yes, there will be opportunities. And I think there's a little bit of doom and gloom sometimes, and that mentality has us maybe a little bit focusing on ourselves instead of our talent, and how we retain our teams.
Yes.
And developing them. And by developing, I'd go back to that growth mindset that we talked about at the beginning. It is not going to look probably like formal training, nor should it. Right? Developing is still connecting to our teams. It's asking questions. It's challenging for thoughts, for opinions, for ways of doing things, having those discussions. Those can be happening every single day, and they should, regardless of where we're at, what industry that we're in.
Yes. So I see a lot of companies concerned about like how they're going to train their teams in the new protocols and the new ways they're going to work, especially like in retail, hospitality, restaurants, and etc. And, the other day I was telling one of the leaders that I was talking to that learning is like contact glue. If you come with the whole program ready to go and you try to just, go from top down and say, this is how you're going to do it, it might just not make sense for your team right now. It might just be a burden. No, now it's so annoying. I have to do this and I have to do that. And it looks like a hospital and this and that. So you're actually just putting glue on one side of the surface, when contact glue requires you to put glue on both sides. And how you stimulate your team right now to start absorbing this training and these new concepts even before it all starts is that you need to ask them questions, like Linda was saying. So it doesn't matter if you're in a very, very senior position or if you're in a very, very junior position, you should be asked, what it is that you believe will change in your work. What does make sense? What doesn't make sense? So imagine your typical day at work before you left the office or the store or the hotel or the restaurant, wherever you work. Remember your typical day and play a film in your mind to think what it is that you would change in the first place. Because that, first of all, will help your teams to realize that change is necessary, that they also want to implement change, that they also want to work on a different sort of dynamic and environment, that they also want to receive their clientele differently, right? So that we can operate in a world that will not gonna be like the world we knew before. So this is what I mentioned by contact glue. It's like generate the reflection first, then include a lot of those thoughts in your training, and then bring the training, and then this will all come together, right? This is something we should be thinking of right now.
And I always, a lot of times in my coaching exercises, there'll be some sort of timeline of envisioning out 5 years, 10 years, what your retirement party, your promotion party, what's being said about you, what are your top accomplishments. And I would invite our listeners to consider end of year. So when we're at the end of 2020, and there may be some, whew, okay, right?
Over.
Right? But what will those learnings be? When you think of your team, when you think of your business partners, your shareholders, what do you want them to be thinking and saying about you? What do you want to look back and say, gosh, in April, I had no idea how to do this, or my strength in this, the power that I had to develop this skill. And what is that now? There are tons of unknowns. We can't possibly know all of the various things that need to be developed right now, but to consider where we want to be, and again, being very intentional and thoughtful about that growth and the opportunities that are here. How do we want to be in this moment? And what will that look like as we come through the next 9 to 12 months, I think is a powerful exercise to do right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. And also, just being very natural about what resonates with you, what comes naturally from within you, so that you are bringing out to the world what you more naturally have to give. In moments like this that are extreme, this is the time where we need to put our natural talents and our natural intelligence out to the world. Right? It's not a time where we're gonna like start developing someone who really wants to be more organized. This is not the time to get them to learn to be organized. This is the time to use their most natural talents, right? So because this
leverage the strengths.
Yes. Leveraging the strengths that already exist, right? So where people are operating out of their essence, where people are actually, thinking about what the environment needs from them, and being proactive in the direction that they are taking, so that they can contribute, they can connect, they can motivate, they can bring energy to that group, and they can give their unique contribution towards their own vision that connects to the company's vision, that connects to the team vision, right? So that they can affect something that is bigger than they are. This is not a time to think me. This is why the live is called Beyond Collaboration. This is the time to think about how can I better be, extending my hand to those who I work with, regardless of whether they're my colleagues, my boss, people who I manage, or my clients. How can I extend my hand and straighten that relationship, that collaborative relationship, so that we can all hold hands and get up together, because we're all on the same boat.
I know we've got several questions coming in.
Yes.
Share just a quick story. I went to college in Seattle, and little piece of my heart is always going to be there. And there's a fine dining restaurant that some of our listeners may know called Canlis. You also may have seen it because it's been written up in multiple articles over the past month and a half or so. It was in Esquire, in Forbes, as an example of reinvention. And what I loved about this, it's been I think around 69 or 70 years in Seattle as a fine dining restaurant.
Wow.
As soon as this hit, and there are plenty of restaurants that are reinventing themselves, not many that are fine dining. They said, okay, so how do we keep our staff employed? How do we keep utilizing our providers, our purveyors, the farms and markets that we are sourcing our local supplies from? They ended up taking the steaks that they were receiving and normally serving and turning those into hamburger. And they started a drive-through burger shack within
Wow.
weeks of, and COVID is, as you probably recall, really was the epicenter of it for the US was in Seattle. So they were very early on and had closures much sooner than many other US cities. And so what they did though, within a matter of weeks, and there are now case studies that are being positioned around this, was their response, their decisiveness, the way that they said, okay, great, who do we have? And I love, they started a drive-through bagel shack in the morning, a burger shack in the afternoon, and they've continued to evolve. And now they do meals that they're delivering, like family style meals for dinner.
It's amazing.
A variety, and they keep evolving. But one of their expediters in the kitchen actually had a little bit of baking experience, and that person became in charge of the bagels because they didn't know. And so that, as you're talking about it, and taking talent, discovering talents, and holding hands and helping each other up, I think that's such a powerful example of an organization, a company that, while so many restaurants are suffering and everyone has, very, very different experiences in this, but how they have not lost any employees. They've kept 115 people employed.
Amazing.
They will come out of this in a very different place with new learnings, new creativity, innovations that would have never happened had they not approached it in this way very early on and with real decisiveness.
That's fantastic.
That story gives me chills. It really, it's very meaningful to me.
It's fantastic. It's training us to be like that, right? To be fast, to be decisive, to use the talent. And it really is a great opportunity for development and collaboration in every sense.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. Should we go to listen to a few questions we have here?
Absolutely.
Cool. So Andrea will help us here. Andrea, what do we have there?
Okay, we have a few questions here.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is from Afonso.
Mm-hmm.
He asking, do you believe that all the skills that you are talking about are necessary to all kinds of teams? How should a senior surgeon deal with a recent graduate doctor that wants to be the one during the procedure?
Interesting. Lyndal.
I think if we're talking about the skills and the leadership behaviors, I would say I almost see it as as a recipe, and that there's the varying levels of the ingredients that go into each relationship. And and I would never say that there's one exact way to be with every single individual. So this is a little bit of a unique question in how do we, I have some questions. Like I want to talk to
the person.
Questions, Alfonso. I think in short, I would suspect, and please jump in, Cristina, I would suspect there's an opportunity to have a conversation, understand a little bit more. I wonder if this is about development and wanting to learn and wanting to develop. I have a coaching client that recently said to me, I'm really struggling because my boss wants me to just get in there and kind of do stuff. And I want to learn, I want to develop, I want to grow my career. I told myself that by next year at this time, I would be vice president. And if I don't keep learning and I don't do this and do that, and great, there's this whole coronavirus COVID thing going on, but I need to learn, I need to develop, and I need to keep my skill set. And coming at it from that mentality, I don't think that person's boss was seeing it in the same way, but hearing that, I'm wondering if maybe there's some parallels with this situation, and you don't know until you sit down and have that conversation. But I think a lot of times we come to those assumptions of, well, that means this, right? And it becomes, right, it's again going, here's the stimulus, you want to do this, and how do we pull that apart? Sometimes there's some conversation that happens in there as well.
Yes, because we tend to sometimes interpret what others say according to the way we would, our motivations if we were having that same behavior, because this is all we know. We don't know what their motivations are. So the conversation is key. Lyndal, you said it very, very well, because what is it that he wants? Does he want to feel that he's giving a great contribution during this moment? What is it? Does he want to be recognized? Does he want to be developed? Does he want to grow his career? What is it that he wants? What is it that is important for him? And once you grasp that, then you can build a path to give the person that in whichever pace makes sense. Because obviously you're not going to let the surgeon be the one. It's a human life there. I can fully understand that. But how is it that, you know, you can give him whatever, the sense of giving a great contribution, for example, or the sense of, yes, you're being developed and you're learning and you will get there eventually, but hey, look here, there's so much more than what you can see. So let me teach you that, and come next to me. And then really using, because this, like, super keeners who really want to be developed, they are great to have in your team as well, because they're the ones who will hold that, you know, tool whenever you need them, and they're going to try to do their best. They're going to try to learn their best. So it's about understanding what's behind that request, I guess, right? And
because those individuals are the ones that they challenge us sometimes the most. They take up the most of our time, deliver the most impactful results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I hope this helps, Afonso. And, you know, you both Lyndal's contacts, and you know where to find me. So, but Lyndal's contacts will be on our YouTube description of the video as well, if you want to have a chat with her. What else, Andre?
Okay, we have another question from Afonso. Thank you, Afonso, for your collaboration. How are organizations dealing with vulnerability?
I have more questions about that. What? I'm gonna let you take this one, Cristina.
Great. So I think that Brené Brown has written her books and did her TED Talks and everything, and she got this subject of vulnerability out there to the world. And it's been very interesting, the work that she's been doing with, you know, individuals and organizations. And to be frank, what I feel from this new generation is that they allow themselves to be more vulnerable. They're more transparent than we were taught to be back in the day. So I see a tendency in organizations to allow more of that. And when I say vulnerability, it doesn't mean you need to cry during a meeting and talk about all your problems or anything like that. But it's just, you know, like if we think about our parents' generations, the boomers, right? The boomers, they were the heroes. They were the heroes. They needed to know it all. They needed to have all the answers. They would tell us what to do, and we had to sort of obey. We were obedient. And then our generation became a little bit more rebellious, right? We wanted to leave a little bit of our mark over there, and etc. So, that was a shakeup already. But then when the millennials came on board, they're like, you know, I want everything fast, and you need to teach me, otherwise I get bored and I'm jumping boats. And we had to adjust to that pace, right? And that speed that the world has taken has demanded from us that we jump into things before analyzing every single aspect of it, that we allow ourselves to experiment more, to go through design thinking processes, to go through sprints, quick tests, prototyping things, and, you know, controlling the risk, but jumping in to be faster in the market, because the market is now so fast. So to me, this is something that I see in corporations, how they're dealing with vulnerability. It's just allowing themselves to jump in without having to analyze every single, you know, aspect, because if whoever thought we had control over anything in life, probably by now has figured out that control is a bit of a utopia, right? Because a virus comes on and stops the entire world. So we don't have control. We need to learn to be vulnerable so that we are able to experiment. We are able to ask for contribution, to use the group intelligence to then prototype, test. And if it doesn't work, we also need to be able to be fast in letting go. Decisiveness. Okay, it didn't work. It's a bit of a bummer, but let it go.
Fail fast.
Let it go. Fail fast. Jump in fast, fail fast, move on, keep going.
The one thing I would add there too is that I see leaders that read quotes. I think if you read the Brene Brown book, it articulates it so beautifully around there has to be that foundation of trust. And we sometimes forget that, right?
Absolutely.
You can be vulnerable around me. And to your point, it's not about crying in the board meeting. It's about sometimes saying, hey, I'm not sure the best way to approach this project. Hey team, you're, hi boss, I'm not sure how to do this best. Can you give me some ideas? Can I brainstorm with you? That's vulnerability. And in a high trust organization, that creates a really powerful connection and it creates powerful results. In a low trust organization, it can be exactly the opposite. So for us in thinking about that, those on the call may or may not have the ability to impact and lead the entire organization. I assure you can lead your team.
Absolutely.
And you can influence that level of trust and the vulnerability and willingness of your team members to be vulnerable with you. And that is such a powerful piece, I think, to have that foundation that then allows everything that you're talking about to take place.
Brings me back to the 4 behaviors you said, because if you exercise community, transparency, being human and communicating, you will build trust.
Yeah.
So it all ties in together, right?
Yeah.
Do we have more questions, Andrea?
Yes, we have one more question. This one is from Isadora. And she's asking, how do we incentivize our team to reveal natural talents?
Do you have initial thoughts on it? Got a couple.
Go for it.
I think this is incentivizing a team. I think it goes down to the individual piece, right? Like I always think about reward and recognition and how, there's several different acronyms, but I think of one that talks about the different types of awards. It's simple. Someone wants acknowledgement, right? And that acknowledgement is put them on the stage and clap and provide the certificate, and another person just wants a little personal note, and how they define that is very different. That if I write a little handwritten thank you note, oh, what you did on that project was amazing, and leave that on that person's desk, that motivates them and creates so much for them. Others want, and let's be honest, we all like the money. Show me the money is right. There's some people that say, well, I like the money. There are other motivation, and money is a constant cycle when we incentivize solely with that. So I would caution our listeners against thinking that is the only way to motivate, and a ton of research will absolutely support that. However, I think there's a customization, a personalization there, that when we're connecting with our team members, what's going to motivate Cristina and what's going to motivate me may be two very different things. It's okay, but I have to understand my team and what is going to serve. Some people are looking to be the pillar in their role. I want to go deep, and I want to really be that expert and that subject matter expert, that person that is very grounded and that pillar in this particular role. The next person may say, no, I want to continue to get promoted, and I want recognition, and I want title, and I'm very inspired by the team that I'm working with. Very different. And those are 2 examples of probably 50 that we could come up with. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you said that beautifully, and I learned that on a session with you years and years ago. And yes, and I brought this to my team, and oftentimes we do bring it here and there because it's just such a powerful concept. And another piece that came to me with that, because it's all about knowing your people, like I said, right? You need to know your people in order to know what motivates them. And as we start getting to know our people, the very concept of rapport, when it was invented, it came out of a psychologist. I will have to write the name on the comments for the video afterwards because I can't remember off the top of my head. But this psychologist said that if you have a very wide sense of acceptance for people being exactly who they are, they will open up to you and they will give you their best. So when I'm feeling in rapport, I'm feeling accepted, I'm not feeling judged, then trust comes in, which you were talking a moment ago. So if I trust that by giving you my suggestion or my idea or writing something to you or putting something out there as a project or as a suggestion, if I trust that you will accept it widely, even if it's not the best suggestion for now, but you won't say I'm to this or to that or judge me for this or that. You're just going to say, well, that's great. She gave me a suggestion. That's amazing. Might not be the best for now, or it's perfect for now, regardless. But just thanking people for that and taking it in, and then, you know, continuing, communicating, developing, showing the directions, and then people will open up. That will incentivize them to give their best talent to you, because when I feel accepted, I feel I can put in the world what I naturally have to overflow to the world. Yeah. It's a no-brainer when you're accepted, right? So
yeah, beautifully said.
Thank you.
Well, and there's a piece of vulnerability as a leader to be able to ask, to be able to have those one-on-one conversations that we somehow think, I think when we get promoted into positions that suddenly I'm at this level, I must be all knowing. It's Cristina, and it just comes to me. And that's couldn't be further from the truth, right? So to be able to have those conversations and really understand whether it's the surgeon, whether it's the team member in the office, at the coffee shop, whatever that might be, and really being able to be vulnerable ourselves and ask those questions and not make the assumption and not believe that we know all the answers. I think it's a piece of that you definitely spoke to.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it looks like we have about 4 minutes now, Lyndal. So are we okay with questions? Great. So if anyone has any more questions or comments that you want to bring to us, feel free to contact us. You know, leave your comments here on Instagram or here on YouTube. Questions we will personally answer. Like I said, Lyndal's contacts will be also on the comments of our Mandarina Canada YouTube channel, right below the video that is being recorded right now. And then I wanted to leave this last couple of minutes, Lyndal, for you for final thoughts or any messages you want to leave for whoever is watching us or will watch us in the future.
This has been really fun. So thank you for that. Really appreciate the opportunity to do this. And I guess my final thoughts would be two questions for those listening. One would be that if your life is a book, what's your next chapter? What is this chapter? You know that the start of this chapter will be a little challenging, perhaps. Of wow, didn't see that coming, didn't expect this. So what's the next part of that chapter for you? And as you're doing that, I would invite you to think about things from, and again, I acknowledge there are so many unknowns, but will this be important for you in 10 days, in 30 days, in a month, in 6 months, in 12 months? And we may or may not know. And maybe if we don't know, then that becomes a sign to say, okay, I need to keep this on my radar. But a lot of times I see us get bogged down, and especially right now, we sometimes get bogged down in that moment where this really isn't even going to matter, maybe tomorrow. And recognizing that and being able to acknowledge that. And so I guess it goes back to our beginning comments around intention. How do we leverage this time so that our learning, that we're embracing the growth mindset, and that our learning and our growth that's coming out of this, our experience is bringing us to a place that we are stronger, we are more resilient, we're more creative than we were coming into this. And whether that was intentional or not, there is an opportunity now for us to be really intentional and thoughtful with how and what we do over the course of the rest of the year and beyond, but especially right now in this time.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your very inspiring thoughts and questions and concepts. It's been a true pleasure having you here, Lyndal, and I hope this is the first of many ways to connect here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you everyone for watching, and the live will be 24 hours on Instagram, and it'll be forever on Mandarina's YouTube, so you can always watch it later. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.